This is September 9, 2024 at Delray Beach Nuna's Treasure and the Traditions Workshop, Tradition 4 with Mr. Craig W. Tradition 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. Mr. Craig, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carol. Good evening, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm an alcoholic, and my name is Craig. Honor and privilege to be here today to share my experience, strength, and hope, and thank you, Carol, and the group for giving me the opportunity to do so. Home group is the Mighty Purpose and Rhythm Group. We meet 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're a virtual online group. You're welcome to join us. I have a sponsor, a service sponsor. I have the opportunity to sponsor and service sponsor. And my sobriety date is 11/28/1998. With respects to the traditions, I've lived in probably, it's funny, the name of this group, DELRAY Nooners. I remember early on in sobriety, I got shipped down to South Florida, and I was there for about 5 years. And I was a member of the downtown DELRAY group at one point, which was over on Federal Highway, and used to walk to the intergroup office, the South County office, which used to be down Atlantic Avenue. And then I switched to the young persons group by the tennis center. So I have some experience with the flesh and blood DELRAY, although it seems like most people here aren't even from DELRAY, but it just brought back some memories. As far as my qualifications, besides obviously having the physical craving, the mental obsession, and the hole in the soul spirituality it takes to be an alcoholic and to have my membership, and we know that is dealt with and relieved through the 12 steps. Traditions, what makes me a viable speaker this evening to share my experience, strength, and hope is I've lived in many different states. I've served in many different groups. I've served many different levels at the district level, including the district committee member, served many different area levels, including the area delegate. I've served at 4 general service conferences. I've worked at the general service office. I've answered phones at intergroups. I've et cetera, et cetera. And it has really given me the platform to actually utilize, experience, and practice these 12 traditions. And I think sometimes there's a little void between knowledge and intellect, because we often say in our 12 steps, intellect will do us no good. The first step is not an intellectual exercise. We need to concede to our innermost self that we're alcoholic, and then we have the practical application of these steps, and we're always taking action. We're always working them, and when we do them, that's when we get results. Well, it's my experience that service and recovery are not any different. It's my experience that the 12 traditions work the same way. We need to learn them and then apply them. They are spiritual principles. They are actions that we take. When we're having a business meeting, we utilize X principle to create whatever action based on the discussion we're having. When we're at a district meeting or an area assembly, or we're coordinating at the group level, traditions is sort of what helps us get there. I'll start off today with a fun fact that's written in Tradition 4 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. There's a lot of literature. Obviously tonight I'm specifically on Tradition 4, but there's a lot of literature you could utilize if you're not already aware to take a look at the traditions in greater detail. Besides the 12 and 12, there's Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. There's the book Language of the Heart. And then there's many pamphlets, A Tradition and How it Developed, 12 Traditions Illustrated, all very, very helpful. For me, it's also useful to have a service sponsor, and a service sponsor would be someone that obviously has this experience similar to a sponsor. We wouldn't ask someone that doesn't have experience with the steps to guide us through sponsorship, and it's my same experience with the traditions. But out of Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age, starting on page 103 going into 104, you hear the real story about Rule 62. A lot of us have heard the term Rule 62 in the rooms before, and it's often used inaccurately and inappropriately. But in this story on Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age, it talks about a promoter, and it's sort of similar to Bill when he was going to work or tried to work or be the sole representative of AA at Towns Hospital, and the group conscious sort of put him in place. And it's the same kind of story here in A Comes of Age for Tradition 4. The promoter is, visiting corporations and selling people on what he's going to do, and he's the man of the hour, and blah, 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 blah. And he was going to create all these things. And long story short, the groups wrote in about it. to the General Service Office at the time, probably called the Alcoholic Foundation, AA headquarters. Long story short, though, after this process of the groups writing in and the groups seeing that there's an issue here and the groups bringing this to, AA's attention worldwide, and here's what the promoter wrote on he wrote a letter to AA headquarters, and there was a little card in there, and here's what it said. It said, "Group so-and-so, place so-and-so, Rule 62. When the card was unfolded, a single pungent sentence met the eye. Don't take yourself too damn seriously." And I say that because a lot of us say Rule 62 to someone that's passionate or someone that's like sort of on fire in the group or someone that's really excited about Alcoholics Anonymous. And Rule 62 actually has to do with an alcoholic, egomaniac, self-will run riot, and just sort of realizing that he's not more important than the group and he shouldn't take himself so seriously in that sense. It's not something we say to people when they're passionate about service. So I just wanted to bring that up. Maybe some of you have seen that before, maybe some of you haven't. But we do have a lot of sort of misquotes in AA. I don't know if you see that too. But anytime I share on the traditions, I like to point out the fact that I prefer the long form over the short form. I'll read both and sort of illustrate why. But the short form isn't bad if we understand them already. But when we don't understand them, and especially when we bring them to a public information workshop and we're allowing the public to read them, they may not understand them either. But Tradition 4 in the short form says, each group shall be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or A as a whole. Here's the long form, which I think is a little more explicit and useful. With respects to its own affairs, each AA group should be responsible to no other authority than its own conscience. That tells us right off the rip that as an AA group, we should be having business meetings, we should be having discussions, we should be having informed group conscience, we should be communicating about, things that we need to do, things we're not doing, things maybe change, where the money's going to go, you name it. But the authority of that group is its own conscience. But you can't have a conscience if you don't have a business meeting, if you don't have a discussion, if you don't have communication. So a bunch of people standing in front of the room, hurry up, the Yankee game's on, so we got to talk before. That's not really having, an informed group conscience, in my opinion. I mean, I'm certainly no authority myself, but in my experience. But when its plans concern the welfare of neighboring groups also, those groups ought to be consulted. This is my favorite line. A lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous share on Tradition 4, and they talk about autonomy. For me, I think Tradition 4 is about consultation. The main principle that I derive out of this tradition is consultation. Not only because it says it clearly right here, but it's what allows us to get to that point of deciding our fate, deciding what our informed group conscience is, how we fit in with the other AA groups within the area, the inner group, whatever sort of service we're doing. I feel like, and this is a line I say often, I feel like autonomy without consultation is anarchy. So I really think consultation, if you think about it, again, I always say service and recovery are separate, are the same. They're not separate. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry. My mother just passed away a week ago. I'm sorry to throw that out there like that, but I'm tired. I'm trying to get my words here, so I hope I'm being clear. But so I feel like autonomy without consultation is anarchy, and it's important we communicate with each other in order to get the decisions that we want to go. It says here in this tradition, when we make decisions that concern the welfare of neighboring groups, we ought to consult them. Here's one you don't hear about a lot, but I've certainly done this when we helped start a group. We went and visited the district that the group was going to be in, and we communicated with all the general service representatives and the groups that were represented there. And we're like, listen, here's our format. Here's what we're doing. And here's the time we're considering having the group. And we wanted some input. The district wasn't going to tell us what to do or how to do it, but we wanted to consult and ask what they thought. We didn't want to put a group right across another group that was already there for 70 years. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to get in the way? I mean, yeah, it's a free country. I get it. And yeah, you can go wherever you want. But what kind of unity is that? Why would I want to set up shop right across from a group that has been on this planet longer than I have? So that's the idea of consultation. And what I was starting to say before is the same sort of principle we do in our step life. We call up our sponsor and we consult. My sponsor doesn't tell me what to do, doesn't tell me how to do it, doesn't tell me where to work, doesn't tell me when to get married, doesn't tell me how to talk to my kid, when to walk the dogs. But I do consult with my sponsor. Hey, I'm having a hard time here. Hey, I'm upset with this. Hey, I keep running into this situation. What's your experience? And again, that's what I feel is the principle here in Tradition 4, is to consult with other groups. What's a wonderful way to consult with other groups? By electing a GSR. Because if you elect a GSR will represent your group at the district meeting. And that GSR can have some conversations and communications and consultations within the district. The GSR can go up to the assembly and have some communication and consultation. Hey, our group's thinking this. Hey, our group's doing this. What's your guys' experience? You know, some groups aren't sure how to open up a bank account. Some groups aren't sure, should I pay insurance? How do I sign this lease? Especially after COVID. I mean, I'm not going to, this is a broad stroke, but I'm just saying in general, I don't know why any group wouldn't want to have a clear-cut lease so that their money's protected. God forbid something ever happen again, sort of like COVID. But again, we learn all these things through consultation. And there are so many AA groups. And this is one thing I learned working at the General Service Office. And I was on the group services desk, so I was talking to new groups all the time. So many groups don't understand the resources that are already available and the ways that they can communicate with groups that already exist. So they end up making all the same mistakes that all the other groups years before already made. And to me, that's also a waste of 7 tradition money. Because when you have to send out more literature than is necessary, when you have to send out more, we'll just call it using resources, and it's not that a group isn't entitled to any of that, but I'm saying when we're not communicating, we're missing the opportunity to share experience so we can grow. Again, just like a sponsor to a sponsee. There's some people that could come to AA, just go to an AA meeting, and they'll be fine, so to speak, whether they're alcoholic or not, I don't know. But in my experience, when you get with a sponsor, when you communicate, when things are going good or bad, you call up and you're asking, hey, how do you feel about this? What's your experience with that? You're just sort of on a better footing. There's bigger considerations too when you look at, like, for example, when COVID was real bad and you take Icky Paw, and Icky Paw was in New Orleans, and they had to decide whether or not they were going to shut the event down because of COVID. And they ended up shutting the event down, and they ended up communicating with the mayor. But there was a lot of consultation that took place before that happened. They were asking the General Service Board, what were you doing? They were asking the General Service Office, what were you doing? They were asking other, AA groups and past trustees, again, consulting before they made a major decision, especially in light of being an international convention, with AA's name in cooperation with people in the community of New Orleans, and obviously wanting to make sure people were safe and yada, yada. So consultation is very important in that aspect. When we have an international convention, consulting, prior committees and prior information and consulting the archives. Don't forget, consulting isn't just one person calling another person or one group calling another group. You're also consulting the archives. You're also consulting past experiences. The bottom line is you're trying to gather information to make your, create an informed group conscience. No group, regional committee, or individual should ever take any action that might greatly affect A as a whole without conferring with the trustees of the General Service Board. I mean, can you imagine before? I'm sure some of you have ran into, I know a few of them, and they're actually very famous people. And obviously, I'm not going to disclose their anonymity, but they're in the program, but they're also out there letting the whole world know it in their, even though they're famous and they're on TV and, stuff like that. But wouldn't it be nice if our AA members, before they wrote that book and they were using AA's name, or before they made that song and they were using AA's name, or whatever the case is, imagine if we consulted just to try to see where we're at, what we're doing, and where this falls into line. I remember working at the General Service Office, and there was a celebrity who called in, and we had a very interesting conversation because this individual was getting ready to write a book. And, he was asking, should I write about my recovery in this book? And I was like, obviously, not only in the role of the General Service Office, I can't answer that for you, but also just as one AA member to another. I mean, that's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to write about your recovery. Those are two different things, though, writing about your recovery and using AA and stuff. And then he kept pressing me, and he kind of just said, well, what would you do? And I said, I probably wouldn't really write about it, but if I did, it'd be very, very short. I would just say something along the lines of, I went through a period of time where I couldn't stop my drinking, and then I got help and things changed and my life got better. Just something very simple. But anyway, so the conversation dragged on, and we got to the point where he decided he was going to write a bunch. And then he asked the question, because I had warned him about what happens when you get interviewed, and that's what he said to me. He said, what am I supposed to do when, after my book gets published, these people interview me? And these are things that we don't know enough about in AA, or we don't talk enough about. But the interesting thing is we don't really have a lot of shared experience on that. We have either people not being in the spotlight, period, and remaining private, or we have people widely just breaking their anonymity like nothing. But I consulted with somebody, and I consulted my conscience, and then I talked with that individual, and I said, well, if someone's going to interview you, it might be wise to say, out of respect for all 12-step fellowships, I'm not going to answer the question of whether or not I'm in the program. The point of my story is we have topics in AA that we don't get to really sort of hash out and talk about. So we don't have experiences on, and then therefore we don't know how to respond or answer those. That's another reason this principle is so important, to have the opportunity to see those things. It talks about in Tradition 4, the common welfare is paramount. And again, when we look at Tradition 1, we talk about the common welfare. We talk about how we're all connected, how we're all unified. In Tradition 2, we talk about the informed group conscience, and we talk about having elected leaders, not self-appointed leaders. And we also have rotating leadership. So not one person stays anywhere too long. So we get a good cross-section and good information. It sort of has the same theme all throughout, all these principles: humility, communication, information, unity. Tradition 3 tells us very, very clearly what it means to be an A member and what it means to be an A group. A lot of people say it doesn't tell you anywhere what's an A member, what's an A group. Tradition 3 tells you exactly what makes an A member and exactly what makes an A group. Very clearly. I mean, you couldn't even, I'll just read it, even though we're not on Tradition 3 tonight. Our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. So that pretty much ends all debates at the fire pit after the group. Doesn't matter what else you are, either you're alcoholic or you don't belong here. That's it. It's very simple. You suffer from alcoholism, the addiction to alcohol, or you don't belong here. It's pretty simple. Nor ought A membership ever depend upon money or conformity, but any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an A group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. Very clear. Tells us what an A group. And then we go into Tradition 4, having an understanding of that common welfare, that informed group conscience, what it means to be an AA group, what it means to be an AA member. Now we're consulting. When an AA group first starts, and if they do communicate with the service structure, and if a DZM visits them, or if a delegate checks, fellowship connection and somehow writes a letter, or however it works in your area, they're going to get a group handbook. So hopefully a new group consults not only with the DCM and the delegate that they've made a connection with, but the group handbook has years and years and years and years of experience. One of my most favorite pamphlets in all of Alcoholics Anonymous of all time is this thing right here. It's called the AA Group, except it's an old one. It's not published anymore. But this is my favorite page. My favorite page. And when you look at page 32 in the old 1960 version of the AA Group, pretty much it's describing what's the difference between a meeting and a group. And that's a question that comes up for people a lot. And they say, well, it doesn't tell us anywhere what it is. Well, the group conscience of AA in the US and Canada seems to have agreed upon 6 points that define an AA group. And here they are. And pay attention really closely, whether you're new, whether you've been here a while, because the truth is, when I read these 6 points, they're going to seem sort of radical in 2024, but they're actually quite simple, quite spiritual, and sort of innate to what AA is supposed to be, if I'm allowed to say that. So anyway, number one, all members of a group are alcoholics, and all alcoholics are eligible for membership. Wow, pretty simple. Number two, as a group, they are fully self-supporting. Number three, a group's primary purpose is to help alcoholics recover through the 12 steps. Love it. Number four, as a group, they have no outside affiliation. Number five, as a group, they have no opinion on outside issues. And number six, as a group, their public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion, and they maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and film. And it's a major issue. I know we're not on tradition 11, but we are talking about consultation, and we are talking about autonomy and communication, and we are talking about what makes an AA group. And the current version of the AA group pamphlet says what? It says the AA group, where it all begins. So I would ask myself, and I would ask you to ask yourself, is my group where it all begins? Do I feel that at my AA group, we're giving an accurate description of the 12 steps of sponsorship, of the 12 traditions, of the 12 concepts, and specifically anonymity? Do we understand what anonymity is? Do we understand the difference between privacy and confidentiality and actual anonymity? And sort of helping people understand what that means and why that's important. The most underrated principle, especially in 2024, with everyone running around on social media, posting stuff, and some of our members, like I said, making music and writing books and yada, yada. The most underrated principle is anonymity. And here's why. It's not even because your ugly face is all over the news. That's not why. The reason it's so underrated is because anonymity is supposed to be about equality. And we miss the fact that we're equal. And it really allows for unity inside Alcoholics Anonymous when we can be equal. And we miss that point when there's a superstar speaker or there's a superstar celebrity or there's any of those sort of things. Or there's this hierarchy created in AA. We miss it. We miss it all the time. And I see it often. And again, consultation, consultation. I've learned to love, since I've been through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and especially the traditions and the concepts, and been able to serve at the General Service Conference and watch all these discussions. And my family will tell you, I do the same thing in my family life. I love having a thorough discussion. I love hearing all points. It really helps me either see where I'm wrong, see what I could do better, or in some cases, really helps me to believe in my point even stronger than I did. But it's very important to get all aspects. I'll just say something sort of on topic, but not. I had mentioned my mom just passed. We did services yesterday, and this isn't an AA thing, but the point is going to make sense. The way we did her service is we had many people there. She was a member of Al-Anon. We had people from Al-Anon, people from AA, people from work, friends, family, and everybody had a couple of minutes to share a story about my mom. So you take someone like me, her son, who's known her all my life. I heard a bunch of things I never heard before about my mom because I was open to listening. I got to know my mom better than I ever have yesterday. Beautiful experience. But the same magic happens inside the group conscience when we allow people to share and we get perspectives. I mean this, and I mean it 100%. If the vote never went my way for the rest of my AA career, but in every conversation we had, it was thorough, and everybody had a chance to share, and we looked at all points and we debated, I would have no problem with it because I would feel like I can trust what we did. I can't trust what we do when we just willy-nilly make a decision or we railroad something through, or two people over here make a decision for the group and they don't tell the group what they did. Again, that's what this principle is. Every single one of our traditions at the core is really about humility and unity, in my experience. So again, when we don't have this consultation, that's what happens. Now, even though I think tradition 4, and I know I got a few minutes here, I think, right, Carol? About 5 minutes, 6 minutes? Thank you. Even though I think 4 is mostly about consultation, it doesn't mean I don't think, autonomy has anything to do with it. But I believe we get our autonomy after we have that full discussion. There's nothing wrong with a group having a personality. Those are two different things. Like in the 12 traditions, it says principles before personalities, not instead of personalities. So it's okay for individuals to have personalities. It's okay for a group to have a personality. And I think through conversations, we sort of create the autonomy we want to go. But the autonomy I think of is sort of boring. But the autonomy is, do we want a speaker meeting? Do we want a literature meeting? Do we want an hour and a half meeting? Do we want an hour and 15? Do we want coffee? Do we want tea? Do we want to meet on a Tuesday? Do we want to meet on a Tuesday and a Saturday? Do we want to have our business meeting before the meeting, or do we want to have it after? So those are the things where autonomy falls into place for me. Not we do whatever we want because we're allowed to. That's not what autonomy means to me. There's no consideration there for the rest of AA. And that's part of the problem. A lot of us at the group level, especially the newer of us, don't understand that decisions we're making are affecting AA as a whole all the time, whether we realize it or not. When someone from Houston, Texas flies into Newark, New Jersey, and you decide to use a non-AA literature at your group, and that person from Houston is only in their second meeting ever, they don't understand. They think AA just uses whatever literature they want. That's not autonomy in my experience. I wouldn't say we have rules, but I would definitely say we have guideposts. And I would definitely say we should roll within those guideposts, but we should communicate when we're not sure what those guideposts are. We should communicate when we think someone else has a good idea or we have a good idea. Another thing, group anniversaries, where you're going to spend the money, when we make a contribution to the service entities, to intergroup, to area district, are we going to do it every quarter, every month? Like, again, all of those decisions are autonomous. Those are things that we as individual groups decide on our own after we have conversations. We need to sort of be, we don't need to be conformists, in my experience, but we definitely need to sort of be the same. Again, personality and autonomy is good, but if the guy from Houston, Texas comes into Jersey, or the guy from Jersey goes to Toronto, we want to make sure we're talking about 12 steps. We want to make sure we're talking about AA groups. We want to make sure we're not doing anything outside of these traditions. What you do with that, you can do whatever you want. Some groups have 5 different sort of meetings every week. Some groups do the same thing every month. I mean, all of that is fine. And I love the different personalities. Of all the crazy things I've seen in AA, the thing that always sticks out in my mind is the AA group, and I don't know if it still meets, but the AA group that meets in Burger King, it's only like 3 people, at 6 a.m., like way in the woods in Maine. You know, like the state of Maine, that's like all the way up in the northeast corner. I don't know, it's just something with all the things that I know about AA, and I'm running out of time to tell you all of them, just something like that sort of really speaks to this. Like, that's where they want to pay rent, that's where they want to meet, and that's where they're staying sober. There's nothing wrong with that. But they're talking about steps, they're passing the basket, they're talking about traditions, they're carrying the message. So these traditions, I'll just end with this sort of couple of lines here. The way, if I had to write a report to someone outside of AA, I would explain the traditions keep us unified, and the traditions help us create an effective environment to carry the message. I really think that's the purpose of these traditions: unity and creating an effective environment to carry the message. And don't forget, carrying the message is having business meetings. Carrying the message is having informed group conscience to bring that information to the district and the area. I'll tell you one quick story before I end. This will be my last thing, if that's okay, Carol. I moved from Jersey to Connecticut, and maybe one or two of you have heard this already, but I moved from Jersey to Connecticut and moved to a city that was largely Hispanic, except you wouldn't know that when you went to the AA groups because there wasn't many Hispanic members there, but the city was largely Hispanic. And Miguel came to the Big Book group that we had at the El Dorado Club, and nobody spoke Spanish there, and it was very unfortunate because there was a language barrier. I got him a Spanish Big Book, and the rest of the group, we tried to make him as welcome as we could. And 2 weeks later, we saw him on the stoop on Main Street. He was drunk, and he didn't come back to AA. After that, we got with our local Hispanic district, and they helped create a group called Mi Esperanza in Danbury, which means My Hope in Danbury. And the members of the Hispanic community in District 9.6 at the time, it's now District 10, would travel an hour to help bring a meeting, to help carry the message. And some people laugh at business meetings and some people laugh at the point of the district meeting. But here's what I'm going to wrap up by saying. That group only functioned for about a year because it couldn't sustain from the Hispanic members coming in from an hour away. They had to serve where they already were. So the group died. But shortly after the group died, we actually found out that a Hispanic group existed for 15 years. And because that group didn't have a GSR, because that group didn't have business meetings, because that group didn't bring a GSR to the district, many, many, many people didn't get the help they need. So district meetings are not just about flyers. District meetings are not just about politics. District meetings are about carrying the message to the alcoholic who still suffers when we're using these guideposts. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Mr. Craig. I really appreciate you coming this evening to share your experience with us. All right. I'm going to try to stop this thing now.